I'm just going to check the other tab.
My camera's inverted. It's tripping me out.
Yeah, Google like mirrors everything, so it's kind of weird. All right, cool. So we are live. Welcome back to the channel, guys. I appreciate coming back from my second live stream on my channel. I'm going to start doing a little more of these, and I want to get used to doing this. I love kind of the dynamic of the back and forth conversation with a guest. Today I have TruMalma here with me, and we decided to talk about race realism and ethno-nationalism. So just to kick it off, TruMalma, if you want to introduce yourself, and I'll let you start with your thoughts on race realism.
Okay. Well, about myself, I don't have much to say. I just started making YouTube videos like 6 months ago. Basically, people like you inspired me greatly, and all I'm trying to do is bring a different perspective, trying to bring people together in my own weird way. Most people don't really perceive that, but that's my goal, basically. I don't have any background in this except my own life experiences and my own like thought process and everything.
Yeah, it seems like everyone nowadays is kind of getting online and talking about these subjects and topics that people maybe at another time, another place in time wouldn't have talked about. But now with the internet and now with social media, we're all connected and we can talk to each other. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, when I started my channel, I didn't have any background. These were always things that I like talking about. And, there were certain YouTubers that inspired me. And I always talk about my video, and my videos like, hey, I'm just a guy. All your other YouTubers that you watch, they're all people, numbers, YouTube could crash tomorrow. A number doesn't mean anything. It just depends on the merit of your ideas and how does it stand. But in particular, race realism has been kind of like a sticking point with a lot of YouTubers now, and it's divided a lot of people, and it is a very touchy and like weird subject that people don't like to talk about sometimes. And but I thought it was interesting. I wanted to get your thoughts. So what are your thoughts? What do you think about the subject, and basically the prognosis that with race realism, it's showing that different races have different IQs from different places, and that immediately is a charged subject and a charged thing. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I agree that we live in a current like state of affairs where anything you say is going to be blown out of proportion. So like it makes it dangerous. But like my personal I have many personal problems with race realism, but the fact of being just making race realism your topic to me isn't a problem in itself. That's the only thing you focus on. Anybody that tries to fix anything and can only focus on one category of things is probably not going to make anything better, and in fact make things worse. Because if you overgeneralize and categorize, you just end up like missing out on like true facts because you're so you're looking for confirmation bias.
Sure, but would you agree that some cultures are better than others?
I made a video on this topic. I don't agree with moral relativism at all, and that's kind of like why I started making my channel, because I can understand some of the plights of the alt-right, but I'm more I agree way more with the civic nationalists, and I've seen the rift happen, and that's why I even I follow some people on my Twitter that are ethno-nationalists, and I'm on a like normal terms with those people. But it's not because I agree with them. To be honest, I disagree with pretty much everybody I follow on at least a topic or another. What I'm trying to do is like make people realize that I'm listening to what they're saying. I understand what they're saying, but what my contingency is when you magnify something too much, you miss out on the bigger picture. And I think it's not only dividing people more, but it's not going to solve any problem. I think this happened before in history, the Antifa and the far right and all of that. And I think so to speak, the powers that be, whatever that means for whoever is hearing that, that's what they want. I just think we're perpetrating like a behavior that's just going to destroy us even more. Because yes, races, there's differences between peoples and ethnicities and all of that, but there's people that have the same ethnicities that are in completely different environments that won't have the same genes. It's not because there's similarities at some places that means that like some person that is white can have more gene similarity to somebody else that is mixed than to somebody else that is white. Like, I don't know if I'm making this statement right.
Yeah, I definitely understand. And you know, when it comes to what, you know, my opinion with the race realism, I do, you know, it's obvious. Anyone who denies the different IQ levels and the different things that, you know, are found in races, you know, they're, you know, they can go deny, like, oh, IQ doesn't mean anything. It's like it's arbitrary. It's like it is a unit of measurement, and you can, you know, you can confer whatever you want from it. I think there is something behind it. I don't think it has to do with a lot with race. People make it like this black and white thing. But I wanted to make sure to come on the stream and kind of talk, like I said, from my own personal experiences, from, you know, my background. I'm from Brazil. I'm a Brazilian immigrant to America, United States. And there's a lot of things from the Brazilian culture that I don't like, and it is kind of like you can see the differences, and it's like I wanted to watch some videos because I think when you have these IQ levels and everything, like I pulled up the world ranking of IQ, and it has let me see here, and it has a lot of Asian countries, and I wanted to talk about that. Why the, you know, the top of the heap is, you know, Asian countries, and and the top of the heap is Asian countries. So I don't think it's like a white black thing, and with Asians. And the reason I bring up Brazil is because we have a huge problem with criminality, with crime, with people being raised in a certain environment. You know, we don't really have that. What we have in Brazil, we don't have much racism. You know, you're less likely to find cases of people being racist towards each other in society. You more see a lot of classism. There's a huge classism problems. Like, you know, instead of that a race story, someone will always have a story of how they were treated because they'll go into a shop, or they'll go into a store, and not because of the color of their skin. That's irrelevant, but it's more of like
clothes.
Yeah, what are they wearing? Like, how do they look? And if someone, like, you have to be like, you won't get serviced if you go, which doesn't happen in America. Like in America, you know, you can look whatever. It doesn't matter what you look. You know, when you go into the stores. And I know you're in Canada. I know United States, Canada has many similarities. But in Brazil, yeah, many people have a story of how they're treated differently because of what they're wearing, because of, you know, they have to dress a certain way because they won't be serviced. Literally everyone I know, family members, friends who live there, has at least one story of that happening to them. But when I want to talk about this, you know, I want to make sure I emphasize that I do believe that some cultures are better than others. You know, like I said, something like I'm gonna just start talking about my own background because, you know, like I said, that's kind of like a little safer territory. But Brazilian people, we're always fucking late. We're always late, and it's Latino people in general, and it's a fucking ugly thing. And if someone looks at me and or looks at someone like, oh yeah, those people are always late, or some culture is always late, I think it looks really bad. And it's very common. Like I literally was at a Christmas party, and I went to, you know, these friends of ours that we have, my family are associated with. They're Brazilian as well, and they had another Brazilian family coming to the party. They literally told them that the party was at like 5:30, and they showed up at 7:30, like 2 hours later. And she said, "Okay, guys," and it's weird because the person that was hosting the party, you know, they told us like, hey, I'm gonna invite you at 6:30. The party really is at 6:30. I know you're gonna show up on time. I'm gonna tell this other family to show up at 5:30. Let's see what time they come. And they ended up coming at 7:30. Yeah. So it's just,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but it's just things like that where it's like, fuck, like, yes, that is something part of Brazilian culture. I hate it. Like, I love my culture. I love my music, my food, and family, like things that you're grown to. Like people say, like, oh, if you believe in this, it's because you hate your own race or your own culture. I don't hate my own culture, but I will point out, the shit that we have with our culture and our society and my society, or where I came from, and so what is your opinion on that?
I think that's a more of a newer generation kind of thing. Older generations are more they don't want to admit their fallibility and things like that, I feel. So like me, I'm Romanian, and God, like everybody knows there's some pretty good stereotypes about Romanian people, and like I can't really disprove them, to be honest. Like I think it's true, like, and it's easier when you can start by admitting your own, so you can are able to accept when other people do it too. I feel it's important to. I realize that like humans are prone to try to see patterns and traits and categorize. That's just how our brain tries to facilitate like all the information we get all the time. So that's normal. That's for sure. Like I think that's normal.
Sure. Yeah. I know, and it has a lot to do with people from Eastern European, Slovenian, Romanian, Russian, all those, I don't know all of them, but what I'm kind of talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, they talk about like what cultures have invented stuff, and people always point to like different cultures that invented stuff, and you see from like coming from Russia and a lot of Eastern European countries that were under the foot of communism and socialism. It's crazy. That's another thing. That was one of my inspirations too to start my channel, is talking about, like I consider myself a full-blown libertarian, and I don't really like to use that label because
Yeah, me too.
people will think a certain way of you when you think of that, but the dictionary definition of what that is, that's what I am. Just completely free market. I think government fucks everything up. People are always talking about, I see kids here talking about socialism. I know as someone who grew up with other Latino Americans, people from Venezuela. I knew a kid in middle school that he lived in Venezuela, and it's like, yeah, that motherfucker was dying to come here, and he never wants to come back, he never wants to go back to Venezuela because of how much of a shithole it is. And people also from Cuba, the capitalist societies, like you when you have the incentive of money, when you have the incentive of just just capitalism. Those are the societies that are going to create your iPhones, your smartphones, your cars, your everything. What is the last like Russian invention? Besides vodka, or I'm sure
I
there's.
don't know anything about that, but yeah.
I'm sure there's something, but that's another thing that we can point to about culture. And speaking of culture, of like some cultures are better than others. People always love to talk about poverty. Like, oh, the reason that there's this much crime, it's because there's poverty, and I disagree with that. I think that there's a lot of poverty in Brazil, where I'm from, and we're gonna watch a couple videos here, and I just want to get your reaction to it. But there's a lot of crime, but I disagree with many people. It's like, oh, it's because of poverty. It's because of poverty. It's like, no, I don't think it's because of poverty, because you look at this IQ scale too, and you also see the Asians. Asians are very smart, and they Indonesia, Thailand, a lot of these developing countries, they're poor. They're fucking poor, but they don't have the level of crime many other countries do. So I think that's something to see too, that people always try to blame, oh, it's because of poverty. We blame that on why there's certain actions. I disagree. Like,
It's the government.
I don't think it's the government. It's the culture. It's what culture do people come from? Because you have these Asian countries, for example, I think it was Indonesia or Indonesia. I don't think it's Thailand. I'm pretty sure it's Indonesia or Singapore, one of the two. But they have a jail, like kids who like fuck up, and like there's no such thing as a juvenile detention center in those countries. The kids who fuck up and they're under 18, you're a man. By the time you're walking around and interacting in the world, you're considered a man. and they get thrown in the same jail that the adults do. And that's a very hard time for those kids who get thrown in there. And guess what? They have very little crime because at a very low, young age, they are taught to behave. They are taught to not steal.
Yeah.
We're going to watch certain videos here of in Brazil. And I'm going to comment something about what they do to people who steal in these countries. But I don't know if there's anything you want to piggyback off.
Yeah, before we get in that, like going through the Romania part, so let's say Romania, like it's a white ethno state, like people, yeah, there'll be like classism, but there'll be like, example, a lot of problems between Hungarians and Romanians. They really hate each other, even if they're pretty much the same, and things like that. And for the stealing thing, so let's say, I guess in a country like Indonesia, like maybe it's a part of the culture, but let's say Romanians did have that in their culture, but with communism, what it created is a lot of poverty, a lot of people having a lot of kids because abortion was illegal and all of that. And so a lot of orphans. And then when the communist regime fell, all these orphans got in the streets and had to live their own lives. And so it created all these homeless people and even more homeless kids and so on and so forth. So it's like kids raising kids. It's kind of, I feel like certain countries have this problem. Like, I don't know much about it, but my friend visited Jamaica. No, was it Jamaica? Anyways, I don't want to talk out of my ass, but it seems sometimes like when some certain events happen and it really creates a lot of young parents and parents that didn't have good parents of their own, then that just creates a cycle that gets repeated compared to an older culture that they have all these past experiences about how to raise a kid, how to teach them what to do and what not to do. Like it's when the culture is so old and has been preserved very well, it's going to be better and easier to do that compared to a country like Romania, where all the culture was cut out and replaced and then everybody thrown in the streets, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy. I know I've been, researching and studying a lot of communism that happened in, those kind of countries where, people would be like, oh, like, how did that exist? And like, how would it be? And, I was talking to someone and she was saying how, like, they would teach the parents, like, they would teach the kids in schools that if they're like, people always try to equate it to like atheism, but when they, in those communist countries, when they're living there, like the state is the state is God, and the state is, they see the government as this all touching, they can't talk bad about this, about the government, and they'll teach the kids in schools to rat on their parents if they're talking bad about the regime or something, and it's pretty mind-blowing.
Well, that's my problem with collectivism. Like Ceausescu, the dictator of Romania, he went to North Korea and studied there and brought it back and tried to implement it as best as he could in Romania. And they would take food, put it in trucks, bring it to the small little villages, put it on the shelves, take some pictures, and then take the food and then put it in a truck and then go to the other town. And that would be seen as good, like, because you make the regime look good, that's all that matters. No one cares about the starving people, so it's
Yeah.
Collectivism is cancer.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, but I wanted to do I like to kind of have some reactions, or watch videos on like my streams. That's something I want to start doing more. But I want to screen share this. See if this works. Screen share. All right, here we go. So this is a video. I want to just get your reaction to this. Let's see if I make it bigger. Yeah, I'll make it bigger. It's how criminals repeatedly attack and rob tourists in Brazil. So, like, when I go back to Brazil, I can't wear, you don't wear jewelry in the streets. You don't, smartphones, you don't have a smartphone like around, like, because this is kind of what will happen. And this was at the height of last year when they had the Olympics in Brazil. Or not last year. Yeah, 2016, last year. when they had the Olympics in Brazil. So let me know if this fills the entire screen.
Yeah, it does.
All right, cool. So let's watch this here.
Well, that's loud though. Ugh.
I'll turn it down. So this is one intersection in Brazil of this filming.
Holy.
So if you didn't see that, that was some kid, because this is what they have. They have a whole bunch of poor kids on the streets, and snatch some lady or some dude's necklace, some jewelry necklace.
And the guy fought back, basically.
Yeah, and then people get pissed because it's like, just if some random dude is like, he punched the kid because it's like, stop fucking doing this,
Yeah. Man, you walk away. No. Jeez. They're so young too.
Yeah, it's just kids. It's what you were saying. It's about kids.
Yeah. Or Romania has like similar problems, but I don't know if they do things like that. Like, I don't know everything that happens there, but when I went, which was a long time ago, they cripple sometimes their own kids, and like they just have somebody like drag themselves in the street and all of that. Yeah.
Right. So the reason I wanted to show this is because in a lot of Asian countries, which, like, I agree, it's kind of crazy, but a lot of Asian countries where it's like a small village or some certain cities, like if they take like stealing very, very serious, and where there's a kid or some dude, a little kid or a little youngling that steals something. They I mean, depending on the age, it depends to what they steal, but all the store owners were literally like just kick the ass of the kid who stole that. And that creates a culture of like, we are not tolerating this. We are not tolerating criminality. We are not tolerating thievery. So that's something that's awesome. That's cool. Like fucking Asians rock on, dude. I completely believe in that. I have no problems with people doing that, because you do get pissed off. Like, you can't even walk in your own goddamn city, or you can't have your own. I can't have my iPhone like trying to film something because someone will snatch it. We're gonna watch where they snatch it. People are like literally sitting in the bus.
It's in the same video. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to skip it here. I think this is the one. The lady is literally like having to watch herself on the freaking bus because the kids will snatch it out of your hand.
It was a phone she had in her hand?
On your phone, where he went to look.
Well, I didn't know if she had a watch or something. I didn't know. Damn.
So this is one intersection in Rio de Janeiro.
Oh, he had a necklace on?
Yeah, they'll snatch your fucking necklace.
Oh, jeez. Did he really make that much money off a phone?
Hell yeah. A smartphone, an iPhone, like
Yeah.
that's the prices of like smartphones, iPhones, they're like 3 times the value in Latin American countries, you know.
Huh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like in a regular iPhone, $650, $750. That same iPhone in Brazil, I think, is like literally $2,000,
Wow.
$2,300. People will make a living buying phones. That's why you see the launch of the iPhone. You see the launch of the iPhone in like Manhattan, like the big major Apple stores. They'll pay, they'll literally pay Chinese immigrants to wait in the line. People like the groups will pay Chinese immigrants to stay in the line, um, buy like 3, 4 iPhones, and when they pay them, they're staying in that line for like days. So they're like sleeping, eating in that same spot, buying the iPhone. As soon as they come out of the Apple store, that guy will pay them for them staying in that line. I think they probably get paid per hour. Get the iPhones, sell it overseas immediately, and it's literally worth, it's a huge market, smartphone
Wow.
and reselling. I resell phones and stuff. Online now with the internet. There's the reselling market is so huge. And then here's another video I wanted to watch. This was in Santa Catarina as police go on strike in Brazil. Let's watch it.
Am I gonna see people die?
No, promise. You see that too, though.
But I see the word purge.
Yeah, it's like a real life purge because the police went on strike, so they're like just ransacking everything.
Oh, purge like that.
No, because yeah, they're stealing, which I know happens in America too. But now, and there's also like shootouts and shit. It becomes like the Wild Wild West.
Yeah. So the police like stood down like as a protest or what? On strike?
Yeah, they went on strike. And that's for people to see too when they always talk about gun control and like, oh yeah, Brazil has some of the strictest gun control. They have some of the strictest gun control. All the criminals, they're the ones who have the guns.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's almost like criminals don't obey the law.
Yeah, they get their hands on the gun, and you have hefty fines. You have hefty fines for owning a gun. So
I guess like the thing ethno-nationalists will say it's all in the genes and all of that, but if you take the same people from there and raise them somewhere else, like it's not like they aren't able to like adapt or so on and so forth. It's everyone knows that if you're malnourished when you're a kid, your bones or your teeth or your jaw won't become big enough and things like that. How is it so hard to understand that malnutrition can affect the growth of the brain?
Well, yeah, a lot of the whole IQ thing too has a lot to do with culture. Like I said, some cultures are better than others, and that's why there's nothing wrong with preserving a culture, preserving a country. For example, Canada. I love Canada's immigration laws, and that's something I wish the United States. I know Trump talked about that, and when he talked about his strict immigration, it is following something. It's following the similar immigration laws that Canada has. Where it's very hard to get into Canada, and you have to have, you have to be skilled. There's a long process.
I made a video on this.
Yeah. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, Trump tried to pass the RAISE Act. I know, like, not many people paid attention to that, but the RAISE Act would have given you guys in the States like a point-based system, pretty much like exactly like we have here in Quebec. And like where I live, like Montreal is a good example. When I say like it's a good example here in Montreal of like how it works, people get super triggered. By that I mean that it's very secular. Like people that come here don't try to convert other people. They don't speak about their religion in public and all of that. Like, and it works. It works well. I have met the amount of people that didn't speak French or English on both my hands. You know, like it's not racist to want like the thing with immigration is like some people believe you're making a dent in world poverty, but you're really not. Immigration is supposed to be a tool to uplift your country. You're supposed to get more out of it than you give.
Yeah, and that's the problem too with the huge refugee crisis, which is happening in Europe, mostly in Europe, about just spilling in of people, of immigrants and refugees from another culture, and it's a huge culture clash, and you're seeing that huge problem in Europe, and then people are are worried about what's going to happen in Canada. Um, Canada, I love Canada. Going there, I visited there, and the cities, and their government works for what they're doing. And that and like I said, that's why I want America. Like people are like, oh, they're trying to inflate illegal immigration and legal immigration. Someone who legally immigrates to somewhere, they have to go through so much to get that process. And it's what you're saying. You have to give something to that country. Like you have to show that you're skilled and that you have, you're a family and you're gonna be a benefit to the society.
Yeah.
It's not all about just, oh yeah, we'll let anybody in. Like that's when you're fucking yourself over, when you're just not preserving the value. Western values are the best values, and people need to follow that. That's why in Europe, when they try to like, oh yeah, we need to respect the Middle Eastern values and cultures and shit. And it's like, no, you guys have the best culture. They don't have a good culture. They have a culture where where they are super misogynist and hit women and rape women and are groping women in the streets. That's not obviously a culture that you want to. That's a bad culture, and it's okay to point out the differences.
Yeah, it's the PC culture, man. It created like I used to be way more of a moral relativist, like in that way, like saying things like all cultures are equal. Like I have said that out loud, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago,
Sure.
and I understood the fallacy in it. Eventually, there's some things that I really stand against, and then there's some cultures that are intertwined with those things that I'm really against. And like until they reform, like I'm sorry, but it's not equal. It's not.
Exactly. That I saw something else too that I was talking to my family. They have a Vice. I guess I can't show it on the stream because it'll be copyright, but they have a video on Vice, and it shows how Puerto Rico, they had the huge hurricane that hit Puerto Rico, and to this day they don't have electricity to this day in Puerto Rico because the hurricane knocked out the entire electrical grid in the country. So there's still today, we're trying to repair the electrical grid, and there's some families and some people, most homes actually, and I think it's like 90%, that since the hurricane, they haven't had electricity. They haven't had a normal electricity in their home. And then they looked more into it, and I found it kind of funny because they were showing how when they first set up the electrical grid, most of the energy, like the coal and all the resources and stuff, came from, I mean, I could be inverting this, but it came from the south. Yeah, it came from the south, but most people lived on the top of the island, and that's a huge design flaw, where it's like, yeah, so most of the energy, like it was a huge design flaw. So they built this electrical grid. It wasn't even done right. So that's part of it, the reason it was kind of knocked out of the way. And I saw this, and it's like it was showing the workers, like they were showing how sometimes they would have to have like 10 to 12 workers working on one section because the initial electrical grid shouldn't have been set up on such a poor landscape. So, they would have mudslides and stuff. And it's like, I'm just thinking like, man, it's just a fucking Latin American thing just to do a half-ass job. Like sometimes in our countries, we do shit half-ass. That's something America, Western countries don't do. Let's do a job right the first time because, it's gonna get fucked up later. And yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny with like
It's not a Latin thing. Romania has very similar problems. Actually, there was a lot of protest. Was it like 2-3 years ago? Because I think it was like a concert place. The roof fell on the people or something, and so that concert place was approved as a secure thing by city inspectors and everything. So basically, it exploded because Romania has a giant corruption problem. So even when the communist regime got gutted, people were still able to fill their pockets and get all these corrupt systems in that everybody's just making a bunch of money and none of the infrastructure is actually getting taken care of. In Montreal, we have a very similar problem than Romania. It's a big corruption problem. There's a lot of money and everything, and it's the same reason why I'm against the Board of Education and all of that. Like, we have a big corruption and bureaucracy problem, and I feel like everything would be really different and if we would view money as something different than what we viewed it as right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's my firm belief that government, like, we need to have less government like things. You have places like the post office, you have the DMV. That's why people are complaining and they're like, oh, we want more taxes, we want higher taxes. And it's like, where do you think these taxes go to? These taxes are going to a government. They're not go. There's not a check in the mail that you're receiving. There's a huge filter, and that filter is the government. And inevitably, they are usually pocketing that money. That was the problem in Brazil as well. That happened towards the end of 2016. They literally had to kick everyone out in the government because and like I said, this is a Latin American thing too. Venezuela, which was socialist, which is socialist, is out of all the Latin American countries, has the highest resources in that country of oil, or what was another export, but
gold, I think.
Yeah, something. I'm not too familiar.
Oh no, that was Haiti. I know.
Yeah, they have the highest resource, and they went to a socialist government, and they're the poorest, right? And Brazil, in the beginning of the 2000s, Brazil was more leaning towards capitalist things, capitalist policies, and it was helping the economy. It was helping small business owners. It was helping people who are trying to find jobs after they graduate and get educated, right? And then towards the end of this president, her name's Dilma. They followed more socialist policies. I mean, they don't outright call it socialist, but it's just this thing. It's called this thing that's supposed to help poor people, but and they're jacking, like, rich people in Brazil. They have some of the highest taxes in the world, and all that money is not going to, like, at least in America, like, yeah, we're taxed, but in America, our taxes, you see the roads being paved, you see things being repaired. In Brazil, like where my grandma used to live for like her whole life and 2 lifetimes, her previous generation, they had a road that was never paved ever, and it's like, and it points to, man, where's all this money going to? It went to the government, and in 2016, they literally had to kick out all the people, all the high leaders in the government. It was kind of scary when you were watching it because it was corruption. They were taking the money from the taxes and from the government, Dilma and the people under her, and they were taking the taxes and keeping it for themselves. They're stealing the money. So it's like, you guys want to put a group of human beings are going to steal. Human beings, you can't trust anybody, in my opinion. And you're giving it to the government, and that's what they end up doing in places like Brazil, where they think like, oh yeah, the answer is to tax the shit out of everybody, give the money to the government so we can create these programs for poor people. But that's not, it's always your heart is always in the good place, but it never works.
I agree, but it's not a Latin American thing. Like I said, like a bunch of places in Eastern Europe like have similar problems. Like it's a corruption problem. Like, it's not.
Of course, yeah, corruption. That's what I'm saying. Any government worldwide is going to be corrupt,
Yeah,
because of people, you create these, that's what the problem too with the corruption in our government now, but you see it many places too with the corruption in government. But I wanted to talk about what is your opinion on hate speech laws in Canada?
Oh my goodness. Well, I personally am against that. Like, as long as you're not advocating for violence, I don't think it's a good idea to tell people how they should speak. I think that's really terrifying.
Sure. I went to Canada and I had the kind of this argument with my cousin, and I was explaining to her how, hey, you guys have hate speech laws, but you don't see that how that's a bad thing. And she's like, no, we should have that because we need to protect people who are like, people who say racist shit or like mean stuff to people. Like she literally said that, and I was like, okay. But don't you think society punishes people who speak that way? I don't know if you saw, did you see that viral video that happened, I think in, I forgot what part of Canada, but it was that video where the lady went in with her son and she was like, I only want him to be seen by a white doctor and there's too many Indian people here. Did you see that video?
No, I haven't.
You didn't? Let me see if I can find it here. So I can show you what I'm talking about. It went viral, and even my cousin knew about it. Let's see if I can find it here. Oh, I think this is it. Let's see if this is the video.
I think the big difference, one of the big differences between, let's say, left and right solution to things is that the left is going to want to legislate things, and the right is going to try to change the societal views on something. And agree or disagree with the right on like whatever. I think their approach, uh, which is not putting laws in and needing more bureaucracy, but just trying to change how people perceive something. I think it's a way healthier way to deal with things, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and I that's what I was trying to tell her too when I was arguing with my cousin. I was saying how I'm going to show you the video, but it's like you have people always try to say like, oh yeah, Canada's perfect and there's no racism there. It's like, yeah, there's sometimes there are racist people there, if you actually go there, right? And this was actually in Mississauga where she lives, so that's where it happened. But I was there and I was just saying how this lady, she went on this emotional racist outburst and everyone was appalled. And it's obvious that this lady is a cunt. Like, okay, you want a white doctor? We're going to refuse to serve you, because there's a lot of Indian people in Canada as well. And I guess that's what she didn't like. It's like, who cares? Like, and everyone in there, no matter what their color of their skin, is going to look at that lady as a bitch. Like, okay, we're not going to serve you. You can go. Society is going to punish this lady.
Yeah. No one's going to want to be with her.
Right. Yeah. No one is going to want to associate with her. So she is being punished by society. There doesn't need to be a law because she got fined. She got fined for hate speech. It's like, okay. And like, she's like, yeah, and she deserved it. That's why it's there. That's why the law exists. And it's like, okay, maybe in this instance, you can say that you agree with this person getting fined and, having this hate speech law implemented against them, but you don't know when that hate speech law can be turned on yourself. For example, comedians in Canada, like if they'll have like a heckler in the audience, there's this one comedian, I forget his name, but he was in like Ontario or something, and he was like at a show and some lady like was trying to heckle him and disturb his show, and then he like clapped back at her and was like being rude and I think called her like an ugly lesbian or something, just something rude. And he got fined like $20,000 and for hate speech. And it's like, come on, y'all. Like this is the society you want to create?
Well, actually, I don't know if you heard. Now you're reminding me of something that really bothered me. Have you ever heard about Mike Ward?
No.
He's a French Canadian comedian. And he made a joke about this. He was a little boy when he sang for the Pope. He has like screws in him, and like he's not mentally retarded. He's just physically like messed up. And he sang for the Pope, And then Mike Ward made jokes on him, and the boy grew up and said, "Oh, I don't mind. I actually got bullied more for singing for the Pope than what his jokes were." And then a couple of years later, I guess when it all died off, like him and his parents actually sued the comedian, and the comedian had to pay a lot of money for that joke. And it was really worldwide case of free speech. Like that's one of the only times I remember that Canada and Quebec was on the map recently for free speech. Really, yeah.
Yeah. Do you like what's his name? Steven Crowder?
Yeah, I think he's funny sometimes. I don't agree with him. Like I said, I
Sure.
don't agree with anybody on anything, but I think he's on everything. But yeah, he's really funny.
Yeah, I became a huge fan of his. I'm not a huge fan, but I like his stuff because he is a conservative person who moved to America and likes America's, things, some things of America that he didn't like in Canada. And he has this cool thing now where he'll go on the street and he'll be like, "Oh, this and this topic, I believe this. Try to change my mind."
Changed my mind. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And he had one where he was like, he about hate speech, and he was like, "Oh, I don't think hate speech is right," or he was wearing this thing saying, "I don't believe in hate speech laws." So
I think I've seen that one. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and he had really interesting conversations, and that video kind of prompted me to have a conversation with my family in Canada. I don't see them often. I want to see them more, but it's interesting just to when I went there, I wanted to like get people's opinions about it, and he has a interesting viewpoint. He kind of changed my mind about it, about, hey, this isn't right, and how it can be turned against us, and a lot of people don't think about it. And what's his name, Sargon, he talks about that too, about in England, how they have hate speech laws in Great Britain, and he warns, hey, America, don't adopt this, because once you get it in the books, you'll never be able to get rid of it. And because of hate speech laws in Great Britain, you can't, like, you get fined for saying shit on social media, or like cops will knock on your door if you say something racially insensitive on your Twitter or something. It's a weird thing that you don't see in America.
Yeah, actually, I in the past couple of years, I was looking into moving to the UK, and all this shit went down, and I was like, oh, no, never mind. I'm not gonna move there. I changed my mind.
Yeah, yeah. I've never been there. I don't know. I just hear about things people tell me about living in the UK. So anytime someone is like from a certain country and they're saying like, hey, this is what we're going through, be careful, people need to,
Pay attention.
yeah, pay attention, listen to it. But this is the video I want to just, I don't know if you're interested, but this is the video of the lady I was telling you about. You see, I'm going to screen share here. Oh, here we go.
So you're saying in the whole entire building there isn't one white doctor? And your kid has to be seen by a pediatrician. Okay, so when you're telling me that my kid has chest pains, he's gonna have to sit here until 4 o'clock. Can I see a doctor, please, that's white? That doesn't have brown teeth or speaks English.
The doctor?
Huh?
If the doctor is
Okay, let's go better.
Wow.
Oh, unbelievable.
Go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital.
No, like, go to the hospital.
Yeah,
Go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital.
because being white makes him more.
Go to the hospital.
Well, speaking English is one thing, being white is different. I don't know if I can take a picture.
I don't want a doctor who was not white, that did not help my kid. I would like to see a white doctor. You're telling me there's not one white doctor in this whole entire building? Yes. Stupid. Oh my God. Well, what's the closest that you have to speaking English? No, I stood there, and they only have brown doctors, and they did not help my kid. And there's another kid that died there and had her arms like amputated. My kid's chest is hurting. Okay, so that's why you have to. Oh my God, what type of horrible country do I live in? I don't know.
Jeez, lady.
So I want to see somebody else that doesn't have brown teeth that speaks English then.
Brown teeth.
My kid is sick. I spoke in perfect English before I asked to have somebody that speaks perfect English. There's nobody that's Canadian? Nobody that was born here?
No.
Find that somewhere else, though, I'm sure.
What's Canadian?
Go.
Go.
Come here.
Wow.
So yeah, this video had like 1,500,000 views. So yeah, that was the video that I was referencing with my family, and that lady got, you know, hate speech fine, and everyone was kind of appalled. But like I said, maybe in that instance they believe that that hate speech law is gonna, you know, it's good that that lady's gonna be fined, but then you don't know if it might be turned around on you later. And society will punish someone like that. Like, oh, this lady, like, she's like, oh, I want someone who speaks English. Like, you know, sometimes that's what a lot of people too. People will say, like, if you have an accent, it's, you know, you don't know how to speak a language. And it's like, no, that's not true. There's people who speak really good English, you know, very educated, you know, they have an accent. I know for like a lot of Asian people, whether they're Indian or other Asian ethnicities, it's, you know, they'll have a very strong accent. It doesn't mean that they're, you know, they don't know how to speak the language. And that's, you know, the type of racism that everyone, you know, deals with. You know, people in my family, people I know who maybe their first language is Spanish speaking, or, you know, Portuguese speaking in my case, and they'll have an accent when they speak English, and then they're working a job. You know, I know my stepdad, he's not my stepdad, my father-in-law, he's Peruvian, and he worked at this hospital, and he speaks English and is educated, and, you know, he did the job okay, and but he has an accent. He has a very heavy Peruvian accent, and sometimes he would get people who would like be on the phone and be like, can I speak to someone who, you know, speaks English, you know, just ignorant racist people. And it's like, and he'll be like, oh, you mean someone who speaks without an accent? And they'll be like, yeah, and he would just hang up on them. And that's some things that people deal with, like, but it's okay. There's always going to be ignorant people out there.
There's always going to be something. Like example, like my family, when they came here, my brother was really young, and, you know, by the time he's a teenager, he spoke like Quebecois, like better than any Quebecois, like with no accent or anything. He's white. Maybe just his name was a bit different, and that's something he like got held on to, but like they still made fun of him for being an outsider, even if he wasn't an outsider at all. So like where I'm going with this is there's always going to be people, like I was saying earlier, their brain categorizes everybody, and if it's not race, it's going to be something else that divides people. There's always going to be something. People strive on having an enemy, somebody to blame things on, and things like that. Like it's very ego driven, I feel like, looking outwards instead of inwards and all of that, and a lot of projection too as well.
Yeah, for sure. You know, that's what is your take on like multiculturalism? Like, do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? What's your opinion on that?
Depends what you mean by multiculturalism. If you mean having many cultures coexist together without any of them stepping on each other, or if you mean like literally having like multiple cultures like heavily practiced and like fighting against each other and all of that, that's completely different. Or like because Western culture is kind of secular and loose in many ways. So it depends what you mean.
Well, I mean, so it means like, so like you go to somewhere like Canada, right? Canada, when I went there, I went to Toronto, I was in the major city, and it's very mixed. It's very different people of different backgrounds, white, black, and noticeably too, a lot of, you know, brown people, like Indian, Sikh people, Sikha, or not Sikh people, Sikha people, you know, and it's a good city. It's something that I do believe. There's so many different cultures in like major cities, for example, and they all tend to kind of self-segregate, right?
Well,
Like,
I feel like a place like Toronto, actually, like a lot of people in the groups you named, most of the people actually are actually embracing uh Western culture, you know, even if at home they they practice a certain culture, like when they go at school, their jobs, their friends, the TV show they listen to, the stuff they talk about on the internet, the music they listen to, most of them, like the big majority, are living a Western culture life. Like, so if you mean a multiculturalism successful one, let's quote, because I don't think like multiculturalism, let's say like Toronto, is the same, let's say, as in the UK, what's going on right now. So that's why I meant, like, depends what you mean by multiculturalism. If you mean a bunch of cultures, but most of them embrace the Western one, yeah, that's okay. But if you mean like multiple cultures and that nobody, like, they just don't want to embrace it and they just clash and want to stay separate, then that's not healthy.
well, yeah, and that's, I mean, it either means something or that doesn't. And the difference between what you're describing, like maybe, let's say somewhere like Canada, or and then the difference with Europe, and they have the huge culture clashes. That's why I said I appreciate Canada's strict immigration.
Yeah.
How, hey, if you're going to come into our country, you need to be educated. You need to, hey, what are you going to do for us? You need to be a good member of society. Because what happened in Europe, you had this huge influx of refugees, and they had you had a lot of uneducated young men. You know, they always try to say it's like, oh, it's equal men, women, and children. It was
No.
young men, a lot of young men who are uneducated, and they're coming. They're going to be unemployed. So you have the streets roaming with these, you know, these Muslim gangs, like these Middle Eastern gangs of dudes who are assaulting people on the streets, and it's this huge culture clash. They don't respect the culture of that country. You know, if I'm an immigrant, if I'm an immigrant to America, you know, and I respect the country, I respect the laws. When someone is coming in and disrespecting the country, disrespecting the law, that's when it's going to create a fucked up society. That's when people will look at like a multiculturalism and be like, oh yeah, this is bad. And it's like, yeah, because it wasn't done the right way.
Yeah, so that's why the word multiculturalism is so charged. Like, not everybody means the same thing when they talk about that, and people get really offended when I say, like, Montreal is a good example of a successful quote unquote multicultural place. You know, they get triggered, but I'm not saying like, oh, diversity is their strength. I'm saying like people here, like, they keep their different cultures mostly at home, and they're allowed to do whatever they want, but they don't push it on other people. They don't tell other people how to live their lives. And yes, there are some segregations, but mostly it's mitigated by the integration policies that we have here. Like, we have quite a lot of ways that they try to integrate people, you know.
Well, I think that's races and people from different cultures. They do that on their own. You know, when I went to Canada, and you go to any major city, you see it in New York City as well. Like, all the Asians are together. You know, Chinese, Japanese, are together. They prefer to stay with each other.
Well, actually, you just said all of them, da 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 da, and like, yes, there's concentrations, but there's a lot of them that are spread out and mixed out, actually. So yes, there's going to be Chinatown and all of that, but in the 2 other million people that in the middle of the town that live their lives mixed with everybody else, there's a lot of people that are like that didn't segregate themselves. So, and I do feel like older people, compared to young people, will adapt in a different manner, also.
Age, yeah. What I'm saying though, in general, like people want it, like the port, like it's not just the Asians too. It's like there's a huge, you know, Portuguese communities that stays together in Canada, Italian communities in Florida, for example, too. We have, specifically where I live, one of the biggest Greek communities. It's in Tarpon Springs. It's one of the hugest Greek. It's the biggest Greek community outside of Greece itself.
I
And
didn't know that.
yeah, and I went to school up there, and it was so interesting. Like, it was so interesting with like the Greek culture, like their foods and their language, and all the families that stayed together, all the people that stayed together. You know, and I would go, me as Brazilian, I speak Portuguese. I would also go and hang out with the Portuguese community. All the Portuguese people wanted to stay together too. I know there's a huge Croatian community too in my area as well. So it's natural for people from the same backgrounds to stay kind of close together. And I know what you mean about, like, I'm not saying I'm not saying all the Asians are in Chinatown. I'm just saying that, you know, in general, this is what races and cultures do. And like I said, and I think Canada does it the right way with, you know, we're only going to allow people in here who have a high respect for our country and our values and our laws. And that's the way it should be.
Well, Trudeau is trying his best to destroy that, but yes, that's how it's meant to be. Yes.
When is the election in for the prime minister in Canada?
Was it? Has it been 2 years? I think it's probably in 2 years. I imagine.
Did he only have one term, or is he on his second term?
No, that's his first term, and it's gonna be his last. Believe me. Holy! Even the liberals were pissed off about the 10 million to the terrorists, dude.
You think so?
But yeah, people are pissed.
So what do you think it's going to change then with Trudeau? Like it's going to swing the other way already?
I don't mean to sound hopeful, but like, well, depends, I guess, what party leaders they're gonna choose. But NDP, like even the last elections, like did pretty well considering they had such a bad leader. I think we're almost ready for a third party here at this point.
Really?
Like, not this election. Like, well, basically, one of Trudeau's like promises was to change the election so it wouldn't be like first past post, which would make the elections like actually fairer, and that would actually give a chance for a third party. But obviously, he's not changing that now because he wants to be reelected. But I don't think he's going to be reelected. Like, it's probably going to be a hung parliament or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. I don't keep up with him much, but I just find it curious. I like what people think about him and stuff. And I saw this video. I watch that channel, The Rebel, where it's like I think they're based in Canada, and they just go on the street and like ask like young kids on the streets about Canadian politics. And they were asking like Trudeau is like making it like a habit to like be at like meetings and like in front of other world leaders, and he'll start crying when he talks about a certain subject and just asking like people's opinion about that. I find that interesting because he always has that like emotional appeal, or like I'm a feminist, and
he's a drama teacher.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people were saying, like, even like men and women were saying, like, oh yeah, he shouldn't be crying in front of world leaders because he kind of like
makes you look weak.
Yeah, it makes him look weak, and he always has a tissue. Like it's like
it makes all of us look weak, not just him.
Yeah, that's what people. That's why they didn't like it.
Well, you got to think like the $10 million to the terrorists. Like, literally, he gave $10 million to somebody that literally physically like attacked our biggest ally, our biggest protector. Like if the States wasn't protecting us, like what kind of fucking military do you think we have here?
Yeah, that's something. That's something that you know, I also got in like an argument with my uncle in Canada, and I was like, oh, they spend too much on the army, da da da, and I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I do agree with you. Sometimes, you know, he's like, they should be spending money like this, da, da, and it's like, hey, I'm totally agreeing with you. If we can have someone walk in there and say, hey, we need to take money away from this and put more money in here, it's very easier said than done than that. But America's military is so huge, but they protect so many other countries as well, you know, including Canada, including, you know, so many countries.
Yeah, the fact that most people like to ignore.
Yeah, people don't think about that. It's like,
they don't want to think about it. It makes them dirty, like, because they're calling out all these war acts, but in the end, their own survival depends on it, really. Like,
yeah, of course, you know, you see what's going on in freaking North Korea. Like what if North Korea is nothing, obviously, you know, they're nothing. I don't think is going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. But what if they launch a freaking missile at, you know, at California or some, you know, Western country like, you know, Washington, you know, some Seattle or something. You know, that's gonna be crazy. Or what if they attack, you know, they try to hit another country, you know, they're United States, yeah, they're over there supporting South Korea, they're over there supporting Japan, because that those countries are depending on the United States to help them.
Yeah.
So it is interesting. I wanted to I saw someone in the chat here say, why does this dude have two BuzzFeed tabs open? I wasn't going to show this on the stream, but did you see that thing? It was 37 things white people need to stop ruining in 2018.
Oh, I stopped paying attention to all those things, and it's too stressful. That's why I never started making videos on those topics. I'm hoping if it's like a monster. Like the more you pay attention to it, I feel the more you're feeding it.
Yeah. Well, the reason I had it up is because someone made a 37 things black people need to stop ruining in 2018. And it's like, yeah, that's what you're going to create. When you have an open,
Yes.
the reason, you know, I don't like talking about this subject too much. And the reason, like, I'll have comments of people like, hey, dude, you're not white. Like, why are you defending white people? It's like I'm not defending white people. I'm trying to eliminate an open animosity towards white people, because that is only going to create more racism.
Yes.
You know, the left and these groups, they've changed the definition of racism now to where, hey, guess what, black people, we can't be racist because white people have the power. So let's just be openly racist towards them. Let's be openly, they say, like this girl, I think on her Twitter said, like, I'm openly prejudiced towards white people. Yes, guess what? I can't be racist because white people are in power. And it's like, okay, continue to be openly prejudiced towards white people. You don't think that? Yeah, you don't think that stirs up, you know, racial hostility? So they had this list, and it's like the things, you know, it's like this fun thing, like, oh yeah, white people, look at you, like, you fucked up like number 1, macaroni and cheese. 2 was protests. They're talking about sneaker culture, makeup, and then you know, someone went ahead and made a 37 things black people need to stop ruining in 2018, and it was like names and inner cities and shit. And it's like, yeah, see what you're gonna do. See what you're gonna do. So that's, to answer that person, that's what I had pulled up there. So.
You better have a good reason.
Sometimes I go on Reddit and just see what people are.
No, I'm joking. Like I do that too. Like I follow people from every side. I try to when I see a news article or something, an outrage on any of the both sides, I try to wait till I react to it. I try to wait for the dust to settle, go check out all the information, and most of the time it's silly.
For sure. Was there any final thing you wanted to touch up on with this subject?
Well, really quick about the whole doxing thing. Like I haven't really followed it that much, but I mean, there's only 2 like really important things that I feel like people are ignoring, and one of them is like Coach Red Pill like had all his information online. That's called doxing yourself. Like if you want to have be anonymous on the internet, you actually can never make a mistake, and you got to be really careful. And the GF thing, like, I'm sorry, but considering all the information that they found, I would have struggled with the dilemma of trying to expose him, considering he probably still has a bunch of fangirls writing him right now. Like, it's kind of scary stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not up on all the names. I just saw that, you know, this like I said, the whole birth of this race realism topic. I saw what's his name. People are kind of turning against Kraut and T and Jeff Holiday because, you know, they wanted to discredit people who are talking about this subject. And, you know, it's actively going against free speech. Like, we need, as much as a topic may be uncomfortable, or maybe someone might espouse an opinion, we can't like they were trying to dox people. That's what I heard. I don't, like I said, I try to stay out of all this.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I'm against the doxing part and all that, but just me, the part that I can speak of is like if in any way, shape, or form, the information about like that girl would have got to me, I would have struggled with the dilemma of doing something or not, because it's some scary stuff. Like, just that's just my thing. That, and Jeff, like, I'm able to say like he did a lot of stupid things. Like he's very mature sometimes and things like that, but I just the GF thing in particular, like I can kind of see where they're coming from, like, and who knows, like, if they really would have wanted to go that far, and then maybe they didn't want to go that far, and then they found that information and it changed things. Like, I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened in their minds, so.
yeah, that's why it's crazy. I made when I was in Canada, I made the video about doxing and how, it's something that I don't really worry about. I know what I put online. Only thing I really care about is my address. If people go and, watching this right now, you see my Snapchat, my Snapchat is my first and my last name. I don't think someone would ever be trying to make a rumor about me or use that against me. I don't know, but I put everything out there. Like, yeah, I'm on camera. I made that video because no bullshit. I don't like people when they hide behind an avatar, or they hide behind a cartoon avatar because they don't want people to see their face. And it's like, dude, unless you're, the only people I can see having to do that for a real reason is someone like the masked Arab, and people who are like literally living in Islamic countries and they're ex-Muslims and they're talking about subjects like that. I see a reason why they want to hide their face.
Well, there's some academics and things like that. Like, there's multiple reasons why you could want to have an alias, like people even that wrote books like since the dawn of time. Like, some people would use pen names and things like that. So it's not only that. I know, I see what you're saying, but like I can understand why there would be other good reasons to do that. But at the same time, like, if you want to be anonymous online, you really got to be careful. And if you're not careful, then you kind of like set yourself up for being found out, especially if you make a point of saying that you want to stay anonymous. Like, for the moment you say to people, I don't want you to find this information about me, and you didn't like properly hide it all, you set yourself up. Like, you pretty much doxed yourself.
Yeah, and that's with what I was gonna say with no bullshit is, he hid behind his little cartoon avatar, and then he shows up at VidCon, falls asleep. Like, how does this dude fall asleep at the place, and everyone finds out it's him, and they're taking pictures of him, and he's embarrassed, and he's, at first he was out there like, oh yeah, like, I'm being doxxed, like, don't dox me, and it's like, all right, dude, no one has sympathy for you. Like, that's why he's kind of crying victim, and that's why, yeah, that's why I made my video. I was saying, like, guys, this is why I'm on camera. This is why I don't hide anything. I'm out there saying my opinions, and let it be for it be. Sometimes people they create this mountain for themselves because, oh, I'm gonna hide behind something, and then people go against them and people want to expose them.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. That's why I showed my face too right away and everything. I'm the same as you.
I mean, that's how I believe. It's like, show your face, if you want to have convictions of what you're saying, like, stand behind it and show your face. Yeah. And anyone wants to challenge me, whatever. So yeah. And with the doxing thing, like I said, that's why I'm very careful with what I put online. I don't put my address, just my first and last name, but, whatever. So it is kind of fucked up though with the people, like, they're actually going out of their way to fire people from their job. That's when it's like, yeah, that's really fucked up.
It is really fucked up, but people really have to keep in mind that it is going to happen. It's gonna happen. It's same for people that, like, girls that do cam work. If there's one person that you don't want to see you, you have to assume that they're gonna see you, man. You just have to.
Yeah, that's a whole other territory too. Yeah, I know that's a problem. People, yeah, and it's tough. We're living, like. Do you watch Black Mirror?
I love that show. Yeah.
I haven't watched the new season, but
I haven't either.
I always tell people, you know, when they're talking about technology, like that show completely shows how technology is changing our world, and it's predicting how things are going to be. You know, it's not science fiction. This is reality. This is how our world is going to be soon, where
Yeah.
everything is going to be recorded. We're going to have neural implants. We're walking around. We're going to have cameras everywhere. There's always going to be someone watching us. You know, and you either embrace it or you learn how to live around that. You be very careful with what you say and what you do. You know, privacy is going away. You know, they say a lot of Gary Vee, this entrepreneur that I follow, he always is talking about live streaming and how the technology is the future. In 5 years, there's going to be kids looking at people like us, our age, younger than us, other teenagers. They're going to be looking at them like, wow, you guys weren't live streaming 24/7 all the time. You're crazy. Because eventually that's what everyone's going to be doing. Everyone is going to be live streaming
Yeah.
their lives off their phone or off some sort of social media device. And I really like that show, Black Mirror, because it is kind of showing how things are going to be. You know, so privacy, I don't know how long privacy is going to last anymore. They're already doing it in major cities. Like I think they showed it in New York. They showed it in London, where they're putting cameras everywhere.
People don't want privacy. Did you see about this new was it Amazon thingy that they put they give a key to the guy delivering your stuff so he can put the stuff in your house with a camera in your house?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, I saw that.
Like,
I would never do that.
so that people's like, oh, let me pay $300 so I have a 24-hour feed in my house. Like, what? So you pay to be surveilled, really? Like people don't want, like, it's incredible the indoctrination and how they really hindered the thinking process of people. It takes years to get somebody to be able to think rationally after they come out of this system. Like they really thought it out, especially I feel in North America. They really planned it out very well, how to keep people unhappy, uneducated, split from their families. Like every value that's important, like they shat on it.
Family is the big one. And kind of just to wrap this thing up is that's why I believe, like, I'm going to make this video about like families and couples and, you know, preserving relationships and things like that. People are becoming anti-kid nowadays. Like they're not believing in having kids anymore. You know, in the Western society, you see a lot of it in Japan as well. I don't think that's a good thing. You know, people are breaking up the family structure. You know, the best environment I do believe is for, you know, a person to have a mom and a dad in the household. That makes everything, and that breaks barriers. Whether you're white, black, poor, rich, whatever environment you come from, as long if you can have a loving mom and dad in the house, that is going to set you up the best for success.
Yeah, totally. 100% agree with that. That's a pretty good way to end the stream too. Like,
so I appreciate you coming on with me tonight here on the stream. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And I know I wanted to have my own take on race realism and ethnic nationalism and things like that. So let me know what you guys thought down below, as always, and peace out.
thanks for having me.
No problem.